2nd, 1836, Texas declared itself independent of Mexico. Most of the signers of that bold declaration were natives of the United States. As such, they were the kind of men that made dictators nervous.
Fire!
The crisis that had led to bloodshed in 1835 was years in the making.
Fire!
Mexican autocrats, anxious at the growing energy and influence of Americans settling in Texas, sent General Manuel Mier y Terán to see what manner of men they were. He returned from the far northern frontera with bad news for the warlords in Mexico City.
Texas podría tirar a la toda. Texas could throw the whole nation into revolution. The whole population here is a mixture of strange and incoherent parts without parallel in our federation. Colonists of another people, more progressive and better informed than the Mexican inhabitants, but also more shrewd and unruly. Among these foreigners are fugitives from justice, honest laborers, vagabonds, and criminals. Honorable and dishonorable alike travel with their political constitution in their pockets, demanding the privileges, authority, and officers which such a constitution guarantees. Que esa constitución garantía.
These American settlers might have been Mexicans by law, but intellectually they remained attached to the ideals of the American Revolution. Now, like their grandfathers before them, they declared their independence. Their document read,
"The Mexican government, by its colonization laws, invited and induced the Anglo-American population of Texas to colonize its wilderness under the pledged faith of a written constitution, that they should continue to enjoy that constitutional liberty and republican government to which they had been habituated in the land of their birth, the United States of America. In this expectation, they have been cruelly disappointed."
The men who declared Texas independent were a diverse bunch. On average, these men were about 40 years old, with the youngest in his early 20s and the oldest in his 70s. Most of them were men entering middle-aged, most of them with families and obligations. By and large, they were born in the South, but a handful came from Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts. Others were born in places like Ireland, England, and Canada. A few held enslaved people as property, but the overwhelming majority did not. Many were farmers, but there were as many merchants, land speculators, lawyers, and doctors as there were sodbusters. A few, including one who went by the name of the Ring-Tailed Panther, seemed to fit Mier y Terán's description as unruly. But mostly, they liked rules. They just didn't like it when people changed them without their consent. 3 of these signers were natives of Mexico, and like their compatriots born elsewhere, were fellow opponents of tyranny. Francisco Ruiz and Jose Antonio Navarro were from San Antonio de Bexar, which had become a battlefield in this struggle for independence. These men understood that the promise of liberty and God-given rights transcended national borders and nativity. Lorenzo de Zavala, a native of the Yucatan, agreed. He was an important national politician who had been double-crossed by the potentates in Mexico City and saw Texas as a natural base of opposition. This diverse collection of risk-takers then announced the creation of a new nation, the Republic of Texas. The question that hung in the air that day was, what kind of country would it be? In 1776, the men who declared American independence in Philadelphia, those 2 generations before, had the idea of what their nation might be. The signers at Washington on the Brazos in 1836 knew exactly what it should be. Here, in the land stretching from the Red River to the Rio Grande, and from the Sabine to the great unknown to the west, American ideals would be tested in the field.